knew a little bit of what you did, but I kind of went on faith, but I just had a
Yeah.
sense that you could help, and you absolutely did.
I'm talking today with my client, Jen Davis. She's generously offered to share her personal experience with botanical alchemy, and we get to talk about the user experience of the healing arts in general and what it means to co create a solution for yourself alongside a practitioner. Here she is.
I think the reason that I reached out to you, Tracy, and I'm so glad I did, was I was facing something that I just felt frozen. And my actions were frozen, but also there was just anytime I thought about this thing coming up, it was a trial. And anytime I thought about it, there was just like a block, like just almost like, and it was so deep. I just knew there was something there, but I couldn't do my normal strategies, I
Yeah.
guess, whether it's journaling or just talking to people or kind of reasoning it out or whatever. It felt very, very deep and something that I needed help with. So I knew a little bit of what you did, but I kind of went on faith, but I just had a
Yeah.
sense that you could help, and you absolutely did. And it was such an interesting, I mean, what I really enjoyed about my experience with you was it isn't just kind of a remedy. It's not like you just listen and go, okay, here, take this,
Uh-huh.
almost like similar to our kind of medical model type, where
Yeah.
you expert, tell me what to take, and then I take it and, poof, I'm better. Like it really felt very almost like co-creating collaborative where you
Yeah.
listened, obviously, and you had a sense, but you were also teaching me a little bit about the archetypes, a little bit about the remedies. But then there was like this point where you were doing your, I don't know exactly, like muscle testing or however you do that, but you invited me to do it on my side of the
Yeah.
table or screen or whatever, and in my own way. And we ended up coming up with, the same archetypes
Yeah.
in the exact same order. And that just really felt very unique, because it really felt like in a sense, you were encouraging me or giving me permission to tap into not just that frozen state feeling, but also why, like what kind of from that higher picture or that archetypal level I was going through. And then obviously you have the Bach flower essence knowledge. But even then, I know you at various times through our process, you encouraged me to even go, find a store that has them, and to muscle test for myself or to hold on to it for myself. So, that really I find it to be so I just really enjoyed that experience. I mean, it really helped, obviously, not
Yeah.
obviously, but it did help so much. And the shifting, not just within the first week, it was like it felt like I'd shifted to another archetype, but you honored that with me. You didn't kind of go, well, normally it should take
Yeah.
longer, and I really don't know if you really kind of went with that and trusted me in that. And that then it feeds me, to go, well, yeah, you can do this. You can
Yeah.
tap into your own emotions, but also, yeah, like, and I'm pretty good at tapping into my own emotions. But like I said, this was so deep, other than knowing I was frozen,
Yeah.
it really couldn't kind of like get kind of a little hold of it.
Yeah.
And then having talked to you and then when you presented the archetypes and everything like that, and the essences themselves, I really was noticing even within the first day of taking the essence, it's just, you just start to tap in a little more, and but it really yeah, it was like it started like what was bundled and kind of solid, it just started to loosen and unravel, um and and knowing that I contributed into that. It wasn't, like I said, just something that I please help me,
Yeah.
Tracy, a
Yeah.
wise one, not that you aren't
Yeah.
wise. I don't think you didn't help me, but it really felt like, so then coming from that process, the 1 month process, I find myself going back and thinking, about the archetypes and kind of like, oh, because I have a sense of at least two of what those two felt
Yeah.
like. And kind of like, is that the same? Is it this one or that one, or is there something else? Does it feel different? So it's not just help in that moment, which it totally did. As a conclusion during that trial, I was so calm and
Mm.
just so peaceful, and not like normally I would kind of obsess in my head. This process went on, the trial went on for a couple of hours, and normally I would have, worried and uh, really like practiced everything I was going to say and just tried to kind of play out all the scenarios. And I didn't any of that. Like I was present, and then also watching myself, noticing, going, "Wow, look at you. Look at you just sitting
Look at
here,
you go.
yeah,
That's
being
so great.
calm." And it really felt like resourceful. Like that would be kind of what it feels like. What I was able to tap into was, even though I didn't go through all of the archetypes, as you've presented them, I just felt like I had resources, you know, there, like, it ended up positively. The case was dropped, and that was great. But I think even if it hadn't been, and actually, this was another piece that you, just even through your language and your coaching with me,
Hmm.
because you were really good at going, you know what, if this happens, like worst case scenario happens, you can always do this. So even that, I think, helped give me permission to go, okay, so yeah, I mean, even if the outcome isn't exactly the way I want it to be, I'll be okay. So, even just your coaching ability, I
Mm.
guess, even if you weren't doing the other things, that it really did feel like you're seeing, like you didn't get sucked into my story. And so you saw a way out that would be, all like like full of strength, full of, it's like me embodying all four of the, the
Yeah.
positive archetypes. You
And
saw that.
that's exactly what happens, right? I don't know if I never know how much I told you, but when you're in shadow, when you're
Mhm.
nervous, worried, frozen, whatever it
Yeah,
might be, right? Having uh, self-doubt, low confidence, all
yeah.
of that dense, frozen, blocked
Hmm.
energy,
Hmm.
all the four shadow archetypes are active.
Hmm.
And when you get out of it, all the four power archetypes are working. You are in all of them. You
Hmm.
have access to all of them like
Hmm.
immediately when that switch
Yeah.
flips. So your process was a really interesting one for me to
Hmm.
follow. Um, Also because we got to do that, that muscle testing together, that intuitive
Hmm.
piece.
Hmm.
That was really nice for me to
Hmm.
be able to work with you because um, I think it's really important. I think it's an important part of I want to say transmission. I'm not right sure why I want that word, um, but the process has to involve you,
Hmm.
um, activating your own power of knowing
Hmm.
things, which your
Hmm.
body actually does know it. And
Yeah.
so you're already somewhat experienced with muscle testing or,
Hmm.
remote testing, pendulum, whatever. So you were able to move into that really easily. But what was fun for me was that we tested not just the remedies, but we first tested the archetypes
Hmm.
because I
Right.
wasn't sure. And because I thought we had gotten down to the core of
Hmm.
what I was looking for. And I heard a little voice saying, that's not it yet. And
Yeah.
when you tested,
you came up with exactly what I was thinking of, which
Yeah.
was, of course, really validating for me in terms of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
methodology.
Hmm.
But the other thing that was interesting is that my muscle testing told me that you only were requiring one flower remedy,
Hmm. Hmm.
whereas I normally would make a blend for somebody.
Hmm.
And I just had this strong message that it was just one remedy. So that it was really cool because after a week, when I checked in with you, you
Hmm.
really had moved out of that state
Hmm.
and into
Hmm.
something quite different.
Hmm.
And then again, it was one remedy. And
Hmm.
so it was a nice, a very clean way to follow your journey through this process. And it
Hmm.
really also very much validated the hypothesis I was working on, which is that when a remedy is working, it's clearing away the archetypal energy on the surface, and
Hmm.
whatever was underneath is going to present itself next on the surface. And
Right.
that is
Right.
exactly what happened. And
Hmm.
that was not something that I was thinking about at the time that I
Hmm.
had
Hmm.
offered you these remedies. It was only later when I went back to look and say, well, look at that. It happened exactly the way I
Yeah.
kind of predicted that this was going to work. And it was so easy to see it in your case because there had only been one remedy
Hmm.
at a time.
Right. Hmm.
So it was very cool for me. But yeah,
Hmm.
you made a really big shift.
Hmm.
Um,
It really did. Yeah. Yeah. Very grateful.
This is a good spot for a short break. We'll be right back with my guest, Jennifer Davis. Many of my listeners will already be familiar with the idea of muscle testing, but if this term is new to you, it's the colloquial term for a field known as applied kinesiology. This work goes back to the 1960s and early 70s when Dr. George Goodhart, a chiropractor from Detroit, made a significant breakthrough in medicine by extensive testing that showed that muscles respond to stimuli in ways that actually reflect the body's internal state. Essentially, muscle testing taps into a kind of subconscious intelligence in the body, revealing truths that often bypass our conscious awareness. There are lots of things going on in your body that bypass your conscious awareness, like too many to even mention. I know I've used this example before, but your bone marrow is producing red blood cells at the unimaginable rate of 2 million per second, and you have zero awareness of that happening. So, applied kinesiology is a technique that challenges the strength of particular muscles to gain insight into particular physical or emotional or even energetic states and imbalances. It's kind of like an energy audit of your body systems. This practice is deeply tied to the core concepts of functional medicine and integrative medicine, among others, namely, that medicine at its best should be searching for and addressing root causes and not just relieving surface level symptoms. It also uses aspects of Chinese medicine and the meridian system. And this, applied kinesiology made such a splash in the world of chiropractic and osteopathic medicine that by 1976, the publication of George Goodhart's study and methodology was already in its 12th printing. I think it was like 5 years after it was first printed. This was the 1970s version of going viral. Doctors were very excited about this idea of using the patient's own muscles as a non invasive tool for diagnosis. What could be better? Goodhart found that by applying pressure to specific muscles while asking the body a series of questions, you could tap into this somatic wisdom and get a yes or no response based on whether the muscle stays strong or gives way. This technique has been used to identify nutritional deficiencies, structural imbalances, and even emotional stressors. The concept even made its way into the world of psychiatric medicine through the work of Dr. John Diamond, who labeled his process behavioral kinesiology. There's an incredible book from the late 90s about the wide-ranging implications of muscle testing called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. You probably know this book already. He explores how muscle testing can be applied not just to the physical body, but to consciousness itself. According to this author, every thought, action, or concept has a specific vibrational frequency, and using muscle testing, we can measure the truth or alignment of anything from a statement to a life decision. He called this calibrating consciousness. His idea here is that truth resonates with strength, with integrity of function, with ease, while anything false will manifest some weakness in the body. So, muscle testing can help us calibrate where we are operating on the spectrum of consciousness. And this obviously has huge implications for personal growth, decision making, and even for our physical health. There's a complete therapeutic system based on muscle testing, including very precise muscular interventions based on this same edit. I'm going to just go back to the last paragraph. There's even a complete therapeutic system, including precise muscular interventions based on muscle testing called Touch for Health, which I learned about 10 years or so ago from Heather Phillips, who was a brilliant and very gifted practitioner that I was lucky enough to meet and who offered to mentor me. Her skill at this was so refined. When she would test someone or when she would act as the test subject, her limbs were like a rock or like a wall, as she used to say. You propose a statement and it's either true or false, yes or no. The muscle goes floppy and weak, or it's as firm as a wall, but without applying any effort. It's very cool. My own personal story with muscle testing goes back almost 30 years to the beginnings of my studies in homeopathy. I was very, very tethered to the scientific medical model of practice. If homeopathy is both an art and a science, I was much more about the science than the art. I thought all of this energy stuff was maybe placebo at best, even if it seemed to work for some people. The problem is that I had practitioners doing it on me as the client, and I loved it. I loved participating in the diagnostic process. I loved the feeling of yes or no in my body. I would just never have dreamed of including that kind of thing in my own work because I didn't want to be thought of as a flake. I'm so busted. It makes me laugh now when I think about that. But eventually, I had to admit to myself that homeopathy itself is energy medicine. And I was just spinning myself a story about not wanting to use other energetic methodologies to help my clients. I started out on that energy journey with a kind of computer based bioenergetic scanning software called NES Bioenergetics, NES Bioenergetics, that actually still blows my mind to this day. I don't use it as much as I used to because at the moment I'm so in love with the Bach flowers, but it really is amazing. And after I met Heather, I decided to really explore the muscle testing world, and I had a lot of success with Touch for Health as a way to instantly shift blockages for people. Like the before and after would be so evident to them. It just blew everyone away. I used it on my husband a lot too, and the speed was a huge thing for me. Like it wouldn't take a 30-minute neck massage to relieve some tension there or back pain. It would be gone in 30 seconds. So I knew that energy work had to have a place in the practice of botanical alchemy because Dr. Bach, the creator of this system of energetic flower essences, he was a bacteriologist who spent most of his career doing lab tests and clinical tests and creating groundbreaking vaccines and all kinds of conventional things in the world of medicine. And then he gave all of that up and built this new system based only on this kind of knowing, not specifically by testing his muscles, but by relying on this innate knowing of his body and not anything to do with like the chemical composition of the flowers. He didn't even leave any of his research notes for posterity. He destroyed all his research before he died. It's not supposed to be an intellectual thing, this Bach flower practice or botanical alchemy, although there needs to be some application of knowledge involved in choosing which ones to take. But I feel it so strongly that we have to honor this kind of knowing and we have to make it part of our approach. And as you'll hear from Jennifer, it's a lovely way of interacting with the client and helping their body mind system to tell you what it needs. Here's the rest of my conversation with Jennifer Davis.
For me, like because I don't do a lot of the actual muscle, like in the way of muscle testing or whatever. I just did slips of paper, right? So
Yeah.
that's an easy, I mean, I guess I had to be able to have the sense of which slip gave me, and it was actually the slip of paper that I didn't want to, like, that was the one. It was, but
Okay,
that
cool.
makes sense, right? Because when I'm feeling frozen and locked in and whatever, the one that I dreaded the most was
Uh-huh.
the one that I put first in my
Okay, cool. Because you didn't tell me that before.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
No,
that I love
felt
that.
like it felt like, yeah, I was almost repulsed, but then in that sense, it was like, no, that's probably the one.
Very cool. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. But I mean, for people that aren't, as comfortable with some of the other types of muscle testing, that's an option, or could be an option
Yeah.
for
So what you're talking about is that you wrote the words on
I
pieces of
wrote,
paper and fold
yeah,
them over like little bits of
the
paper.
4 different shadow
Right.
archetypes on
And then
two
you just
and
and
then
then
I
you just
folded
held
it
them in
so
your
I couldn't
hand.
tell, and then I just held them in turn, and yeah, and then we put them in order, and it was the same as
Yeah.
you
So
ordered.
that was fun.
Yeah. And when I think about it now too, right, the ones that I was working on, the child one was the first one.
Hmm.
And so if I had not been involved in the process, then you would have been my parent telling me, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it would have just reinforced the energy, the shadow, like the lack of power the power I've been giving away. It would have just reinforced that. And then the next one was like the magician
The
saboteur
saboteur.
again,
Yeah.
right? If you had just kind of worked your magic, and then in fact, I think I came to you and said, I think it's this one, and you
That's
trust,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So again, that like tapping into I was almost demonstrating that I was ready for that
Yeah.
next archetype by, saying, no, I think it's this one. And then you went with that, which was really, again, that co-creation or whatever, co-working
Yeah.
together. It's yeah, I found it so refreshing instead of just going to someone who, tells you, take this, do this, whatever, and fix you up, and then off you go. And um it just felt very different for me. And part of it, like I said, was just giving me the permission to tap into what I know already.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. That's a really cool observation that you had about
Mhm. Yeah.
that specifically it it was already getting you ready for that
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
archetype to say,
Yeah.
and now you can do this,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
and I think this is so integral to my vision for bringing the Bach flowers into the present day, because of course they work great. Like that's got nothing to do with me. Like the fact
Yeah. Yeah.
that Bach flowers work
Yeah.
fantastic is no
Yeah.
credit to me. Like they've been
Yeah.
around for almost 100 years.
Yeah.
But the idea of giving them a different kind of platform, and of having a different expectation of what they can accomplish,
Hmm.
and of engaging with you as the client, as the end user, in
Yeah.
a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all of that is important. And I know I spoke to you about this, but the whole idea of like embracing intuitive knowledge when you're working with these essences is so, it's so much a part of how the whole system was created,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like it
I
was
agree.
so deliberately a, a field of medicine born out of one person's direct personal experience and not from, uh, from tests and data and proof and evidence,
Yeah.
and scientific method, I mean, Dr. Bach was very, very um, expert at all of those things. And
Mm-hmm.
he chose purposefully to leave that behind
Mm-hmm.
and do this in a different way. And
Mm-hmm.
I just feel that it's honoring what he discovered and what he
Mm-hmm.
developed
Mm-hmm.
to make that part of how we choose the ones
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
take, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's going there with him into that world
Mm-hmm.
of deep personal experiential knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
bodily knowledge, right?
Yeah.
um, which is so different than our intellectual knowledge, and
Mm-hmm.
to let that be, we're already valuing it by choosing to take these remedies. So to value it in ourselves in a different way, not just to
Yeah.
value that
Mm-hmm.
it was true for him because he was so
Mm-hmm.
special,
Right. Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
true for me too, and it's true for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's a real
Yeah.
thing, and we can value it in ourselves too.
Yeah. But it's almost like I had to get there, or the process you've created helps. Um, it does. It helps you tap into that knowing, that inner knowing, because like you said, I mean, the remedy, like I can go to, I know I can go to the health food store, pull out a chart, and it tells me, oh, if you're feeling this, take
Yeah,
this remedy. So it looks on the surface, it looks very kind of very similar to, oh, if you have a headache, take
right.
this, or
Yeah,
but it's not at all that.
right. No,
Well, it
it
could
took,
be, I guess it could be, but the
it
way
can
you're
be.
using it is not at all that.
It's
So
unlikely that you would have gotten a lot of relief if you had just walked
yeah,
into the health food
yeah,
store and
and
pulled down the
well,
chart
yeah,
and said, take this
yeah,
for this,
yeah,
because it took some unpacking to
yes,
figure out
absolutely, yeah,
what you were feeling and what you needed, right?
yeah,
Like to
yeah,
just talk about being frozen in terror in some kind of, block.
yeah,
I would totally be going in another direction with that.
yeah.
Like if that was all that you
That
had
was,
told
yeah,
me, right?
yeah,
So it was a little counterintuitive, the road that we took. And then
yeah,
the remedy that we landed on at the end,
yeah,
it almost made me laugh to think
yeah,
of it, but um, because in the end it was sort of obvious, although it wasn't obvious at all.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I think that it's so, yes, they work, right? And I mean, obviously,
hmm,
rescue remedy is something that everybody uses because all of
right,
those remedies are good for fear and shock and trauma and
hmm,
whatever.
hmm,
But to do this kind of work where, like, what you were really asking for, because I remember when we had our first conversation and it was like, intellectually, I know that this is going to be okay, but I'm
hmm,
feeling this
yeah,
on such a
yeah,
deep physical,
yeah,
old
yeah,
level. Like, this is an opportunity for me to clear something
hmm,
out of my system that I didn't know I was hanging on to, right? So,
yeah,
like, you've really liberated yourself
hmm,
from some kind of old story or an
yeah,
old program
yeah,
that didn't need to be
yeah.
running in the background anymore.
Yeah. And that
And
sovereignty, which was the first, and the magician as the second, like powers, it feels like I have access to that way, way more. And I know I already did, like, I get it, I get that I always did, but there's something, yeah, if there's a blockage there, or it's like a road, and then there's a road, but there's this, and it stops you. And I had felt very stopped from getting to that space of sovereignty or strength or power. And yeah, that I think the process just helped me like build that bridge, right? So that I could
yeah,
keep moving down my path and get to where I
that's it.
Mhm.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing this. And
you.
yeah, I'm grateful. And hopefully this will help other people imagine
What-
how they could also benefit
Mhm.
from this process.
Mhm.
So thanks, Jen.
You're welcome, Tracy.
Limitless is produced by Neil Haley, with music by Danny Columbi. I'm Tracy Poizner. If you're an innovator, a business leader, or a high performer with deep curiosity about the uncharted reaches of your own potential, visit tracypoizner.com for an accelerated pathway toward unimagined achievements and legacy milestones. I'll look forward to meeting you.